Hello and welcome to episode 55 of Give Yourself Some Leeway with me, your host, Eugene Lee. I really hope you've had an amazing weekend and took some time for self-awareness, self-compassion and kindness, and even self-care. Today I am joined by author and writing skills coach Angela Cairns, and we talk about her personal experience with burnout and how we come across these setbacks, whether that be as an author or a content creator when it comes to writing blogs or even a podcast script, or even in the workplace when it comes to presentation writing or report writing. There are these mental blocks, these setbacks that stop us in our tracks. And Angela talks about different skills and techniques that we can use to overcome these hurdles. So I really hope you appreciate today's conversation with Angela. And I always love getting feedback from you. And our guests love that feedback too. So you can always reach out to me at giveyourselfsomeleeway.com, on Instagram at eugene.leeway, or shoot me an email, eugene@leeway.ie. Thank you. And I really hope you enjoyed today's episode with Angela Cairns. Angela, welcome to Give Yourself Some Leeway, and thank you for taking the time to join the show.
Oh, it's good to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, of course. I think one thing that I always like to start with, especially with coaches, is we all experience this rock bottom or moment of realization, especially when it comes to burnout. And from that stems an awareness that we need to get into maybe burnout recovery or personal growth or development. And naturally, somewhere along that journey of growth and development, we want to either get into coaching and serve others, or maybe it's just some spark or vision where we don't want others to experience the pain that we went through. So, what was that like for you, and why do you do what you do?
So, I first experienced burnout when I had a young baby, and I didn't make any changes to my routine. I wanted to carry on being on committees and doing my job and so on, but in actual fact, I wasn't sleeping because I had a very colicky baby. So I was really sleep deprived, but actually wasn't giving myself any extra space during the day. And I didn't realize I was burning out. And what actually happened was that I was sitting across from my clinic manager, and she said to me, is everything okay? Because you haven't done anything for sort of 20 minutes. You're just sitting. And I said, actually, yeah, I don't know. I don't feel great. And it was a real collapse. I just drove myself off a cliff, basically. And really, as a physiotherapist, I should have seen it coming. But I think what happens is that if you are a very motivated person and you're used to coping, you just assume you're going to cope. And I think one of the valuable lessons to learn as a coach is how to recognize those signs, and in actual fact how to encourage people not to get to that cliff. And talking to people a lot about burnout, I think what happens is that we have this sort of arc where we're enjoying the stimulation of challenge, and we get to a point where actually we're at our optimum productivity. And if we keep on challenging, what we're in fact doing is going along a line where we're still performing well, but we're getting ever closer to dropping off the edge. We really need to recognize about staying in the zone where we're challenged and optimally productive, and we're enjoying that challenge, but we're not dangerously close to being bad. And it took me several months to actually recover. And part of my recovery was yoga and yoga breathing techniques, actually taking time to ground myself, get to acknowledge feelings with my body, get to learn how to breathe to break the stress cycle, and also looking at delegation within my workload, and seeing, well, what did I need to do, what could be delegated, and looking seriously what was achievable when I was on a fairly broken sleep cycle as well.
Yeah, one thing you definitely covered there, and especially with your curve before the cliff, and it was having that awareness that you're heading for the cliff, and it's something that can be overlooked, especially as professionals where you're constantly coping, as you said,
Yes.
and you're constantly just pushing the needle a little bit more, and not taking moments to be like, okay, do I need to take a break? Yeah, how can I sustain this, rather than just keep pushing to see, is this am I still growing, and
Yes.
constantly looking for that growth without recovery. And
Yeah.
and it's the same as an exercise or anything. If you're constantly looking for growth without giving your body a chance to recover, especially let's say if you're building muscle and you're creating all those tears and you're not giving time for
Yeah.
recovery, then you're going to cause an injury.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, rest and recovery is as important as productivity. We simply can't. You know, we see so many sports people. I'm a physiotherapist as well, and we see so many sports people who just ignore the warning signs that their body's giving them.
Yeah, and I think it's having that, trying to help people who are high performers, especially when you're dealing with sports people, trying to help them have that awareness that they need to take that break. Because
Yeah.
I suppose you're going to see that as well with when you're working with sports professionals as a physio, that they're probably going to physically burn themselves out as well, that they're overtraining and they're constantly trying to get to the next level. And
Yeah.
recovery just seems like wasted time when they're trying to get to that next level.
Yeah. And I think we understand a lot more about physical recovery now. You know, with sports science, a lot of the sports science research that's gone on, we understand an awful lot more about physical recovery. But it's not just the physical recovery; it's the mental recovery as well. And if we don't give ourselves breaks off tasks, then what happens is we become less productive. And because we're less productive, what we tend to do with burnout is we put in more time. So we acknowledge the being less productive, but we don't think why we're being less productive. We simply put in more time and drive harder because it's a strategy that's worked for us. You know, it's worked for us to get us where we are, but actually it's not sustainable. So again, it's having some kind of sustainable routine that's so important.
Yeah, you definitely hit the nail on the head there about uh kind of keeping that routine, trying to keep that balance. And as you said there, it's because you're not in your most productive state because you're not taking those breaks, and you're like, okay, I just need to put more time in to keep that sustained at top of the curve.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately your downfall, because yes, because you have less time for recovery. That was a great way of putting it. And uh now that you're, let's say, as an author, was
Yeah.
that, let's say, as a result of your burnout, that you had that realization that you wanted to spend more time in writing?
Yeah, I'd been writing non-fiction associated with my physiotherapy sort of articles and newspaper articles and so on. And then um, after the burnout, and to a certain extent beforehand as well, you do a lot of coaching with physiotherapy, and you're coaching wellness for people as well as just attending to their health needs. You're looking at their well-being as well. And so many physical injuries have a psychological background, a stress-based background. Certainly pain is very much, our pain thresholds come down when we're under a lot of stress, and our immune system gets knocked when we're under a lot of stress as well. So what I started looking at was incorporating relaxation into all my physical programs, and I ended up creating, because I didn't find what I wanted, I ended up creating some relaxation visualizations myself, so using relaxation stories. So that started me on a kind of a blend of non-fiction and fiction, because using those stories, and I loved I found that I really loved writing the stories. And gradually it came into my mind, well, I'd really like to write a book. And it took me a little while to get there, because again, I think part of that burnout thing is feeling I have to get all the duties and responsibilities done before I allocate myself this creative time. And it's the old, when I have time I'll do this, and so on. And actually what the burnout taught me was, no, create time to do things that nurture you and make those a priority. And I started to diary out time to write. And I think it's amazing that it's called law of attraction, isn't it? And once I had actually committed to prioritizing that, oddly enough, all sorts of opportunities arose. Writing group turned up on the day that I could make it, and etc., etc. And so I think that's really important as well, having some kind of commitment to the process, as opposed and commitment to that rest and relaxation, and having something creative that nurtures you is incredibly important.
Definitely. And so when it comes to let's say your writing, and I suppose that the skill of writing, and that's something that you had experienced even as a physio with your non-fiction as well.
Yeah.
From my standpoint, I think I've only ever had experience in, let's say, content creation, and there's always roadblocks or mental blocks, especially when it comes to writing. And it's something that I feel, if it's almost like I suppose as a high performer, as well in your job, taking on writing as another task can be overwhelming. And I feel that a lot of people, that writing is a skill that that goes hand in hand with nearly any role that they're in. And there's a lot of definitely procrastination when it comes to writing, especially in my experience, it's always been documentation. And it's and report writing, and there's always the are you being technical enough in your wording, or are you describing things properly, or are you over elaborating on certain techniques or certain specifications? And there's a lot of are you just being busy and waffling in your report writing, or are you just procrastinating, that you're like, oh, I really need to write this report, but I don't know if I can do it I can't do it justice today, so I'm just going to leave it off till tomorrow. How do you help people get over that block, or that kind of stress related with writing skills?
So there are some really powerful tools to help. And I think one of the things that's really important to realize is that procrastination is because we feel threatened, and it brings up our fight and flight responses. Now, often at work, we're not in a position where we can run away, and I know there are flashpoints at work, but we're not usually in a position to fight at work either. So what happens is we freeze, and it's our autonomic nervous system telling us we're under threat and telling us to actually freeze until the danger passes. So because it's linked into that autonomic response, and it's our body actually telling us to not act, it's really important to get into it from the body. And so one of the ways to do that is to bring in some simple breathing techniques, because when the body's under stress, what it tends to do is breathe more shallow and up in the upper part of the chest. So if we actually take 3 or 4 deep breaths, sort of real belly breaths, so that when you breathe in slow and you take the air right down to your stomach, and you let your stomach expand and your rib cage expand, and then breathe it out. So you get a slow kind of and then a sort of breath. So 3 or 4 deep breaths before we start, it sets up a kind of a boundary between what we were doing before and when we're about to write. So that's useful in itself. It's a mindset boundary. I'm having 3 or 4 deep breaths and I'm going to start writing. It tells the body I'm not under threat because I can do nice slow deep breaths, and so that's not threatening. Gets plenty of oxygen into the brain as well and into the body, so that the brain's in a better position to actually create. And then it's really quite useful to do a little bit of warming up when you write. And I suggest that people, just for their own well-being, do a bit of free writing every day. And sometimes it's quite useful in the morning to just 5 minutes, have a book, have a notebook, sit yourself down. Pen and paper's good as well. You can do it on the computer, but it's really good to go pen and paper and to actually write just anything. Write what you're thinking, like, oh, I don't think I'm going to be able to write today. And look, there's a fly crawling up the window and that sort of thing. So after your deep breaths, actually do some writing, and but free writing. Don't try and do your project, just free write. And once you started to write, it gets the sort of writing juices going, and then you can actually think about writing itself. If you're still a little bit stuck, there's a technique called the Pomodoro technique. You start with your breaths, and then you count yourself in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and go. And what you do is you set yourself a timer of 5 minutes, and you only write for that 5 minutes, and then you stop, and then you stand up, you walk around, whatever, have a change, and then put yourself back down again, and you can do another 5 minutes. And that way you reward yourself for achieving a goal as well. So if you don't set yourself the goal of the whole report, if you set yourself 5 minutes and you count yourself in, you get the writing done. And I think the other thing that non-writers don't realize is that the first draft is meant to be rough, and it doesn't matter if it's rough, because you can go back in and you can edit and you can change, and you can show it to somebody else maybe and get some ideas from them. And it's so much better to have a rubbish first draft on the page than it is to have some perfect draft in our mind that isn't done. So just writing that rough first draft with no expectation can also really help.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a point that stops a lot of people from making any progress or getting anything on the paper, because they don't want to embarrass themselves or humiliate themselves with a bad report. But getting it done is better than trying to get it perfect and not getting it done at all. And trying to think of, what's the best sentence that I can write down on this page, and not write down anything at all until you think of the perfect sentence.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, first of all, anything that you write, the first draft that you write it from beginning to end without stopping, because your editing brain is different to your creative brain. So you write with a flow to start with, and then you go back and edit back afterwards. And I think, because we do, what we tend to see and what we tend to read is already very polished. We assume that everybody is writing that first off, and they're absolutely not. And it's Ernest Hemingway said, I can't remember the exact quote, but he fundamentally said, it's nobody's business that you need to learn how to write. Let them think you were born this way. And that's the whole point. We do all have to learn to write. We all have to edit. So just get that first draft down, do your editing afterwards. And there's absolutely no shame in having some external view on it as well. All writers do. We all have editors and proofreaders, and and there's all sorts of lovely AI assistants now as well. And sometimes if you can't get started, if you cue in your AI to give you something on the page to work from, it's easier to edit it and adjust it to what you want sometimes than starting with a blank sheet. So and we can all switch on Grammarly or something like that and just get our grammar and our spelling and so on checked. So
yeah, that's definitely a great concept, that are a point that you covered there about AI and the likes of people using ChatGPT just to generate a report or generate a letter that they want to do. And people have been dissing it a lot, being like, oh, it's lazy and it's very, let's say, repetitive and everything's going to be the same. But I think that it's great because a lot of people wouldn't write a report because they don't know how to start the report. And they're like, is there a template for me to follow? And next thing they're like, oh, I don't know how to start. I don't want to offend anyone. And they put it off. Whereas if you type into ChatGPT to write a report and say, look, I want to make a polite letter to this person and say these points. Now, you don't have to take what ChatGPT says straight off, and but it gives you a formula like, you know what? Okay, it's like, I wouldn't have thought about that point. Oh, I wouldn't have thought about phrasing it that way. And it's like, and then it's your decision. Then it's like, now I can edit it and personalize it and then send it to the person. So ChatGPT probably does 40 to 50% of the work, and then you personalize it yourself.
yeah.
But it's definitely a lot better than sitting back and doing nothing and being like, oh, I don't want to put this report together. It's too much effort.
Yeah, there's nothing more daunting than a blank page, basically. So if one of the Chat GPT or something can give you a structure that you've just got to fill in, well, great. And basically the work is still artisan, it's just AI assisted. And I think where the problem comes is that people are using it without checking it and just sending it out as is, and then that's just so obvious. But if you use it as an assist, I really don't see why it's any more dubious than using a spell check or a grammar check. It is just an assistance. And why wouldn't we use it? And I know writers have been really worried that there's going to be a flood of really low quality stuff put out on the market. But I think you have to have faith in your readership that's not going to wash. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't use the AI. That's throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We've just got to use it as an assist to what we produce ourselves, as opposed to using it instead of bothering to produce something ourselves. So yeah, no, I think that's really helpful. And the other thing that can sometimes help us when we get stuck is change things up a little bit. So if we've been working on the computer, then actually put pen to paper instead. Take a pen to paper, or dictate something. Just changing the medium that you're writing in. Write with a different color pen. It can really, just moving small things can be really helpful. And it can also help to have some little things that are your triggers that get you writing. So don't have to be big things. It can be a favorite pen. It can be a colored ball, or a little toy, and you get that out and that goes on the desk, and that is your writing trigger. Things that say to us, right, this is writing time. A bit like a sleep routine, you can have a writing routine as well, and those things can help. And I was listening actually to another author, crime writer, and she was talking about getting into that creative flow. And she was saying that it helps her to change her perspective as well. So to not just be sitting looking straight forward, but to stand up and look down on the page, or to I mean, obviously I don't think you can do this in the office, but when you're at home, to stand on a chair and just look at the world from a different point of view. Just anything that breaks up that pattern that you're in. Having a playlist, a writing playlist, and having some music that's appropriate to what you want to write. So if you want calming, soothing, you can put that on. If you want go-getty type music, you put some rock music on. Even if you don't listen to it while you're working, if you listen to it for 3 or 4 minutes before you start, music's incredibly powerful in triggering creativity.
Yeah, and I think another point, even on top of that, is kind of default mode. And it's when you get stuck in a rut and you have that mental block, and it's just a matter of taking a break and stepping away from the computer, stepping away from the notebook, and being like, I'm going for a 20-minute walk. I'm
Yeah,
not going to think about
yeah,
it, or I'm just going to go for a walk. And next thing, things just tend to crop up there. Your brain is
yeah,
constantly creating stuff in the back of your mind. And you
yeah,
might think that you've finished a task and walked away from it, but your brain is still working on it. And next thing, you could be
yeah,
going for a walk, you'd be going about your day, and next thing it's going to ding, and you're going to be like, that's what I need to write down.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's not like you almost want to like run straight away. It's like, I need to take all these notes down. But it's just somewhere in the back of your head. It's always working, and sometimes you're just stuck because you're overthinking on one problem,
Yes.
and it's not going to come to you. Nine
No.
out of time, nine out of 10 times, it's not going to come to you. But as soon as you like not just switch tasks, but take your mind off it and rest and relax, it's like having 100 tabs open on your computer screen, and you're wondering why it's operating so slow. But if you close the 100 tabs and just open
Yeah.
one and refresh the page, and you're like, okay, things are working now. And
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like what you do when you go into default mode and just take a break, just do something, even
Mhm.
if it's just focusing on something small, like making a cup of coffee. It might take you
Yeah.
20 minutes to make that cup of coffee, but you're getting mindful, and
Yeah.
it's exactly, it's the process is still going on in the back of your head.
Mindfulness is such a wonderful thing, and I think it's within everybody's grasp to engage their senses wherever they are, and to switch off from the task. And even sitting at your desk, you can just focus your mind a little bit on, well, what does that desk feel like? Is it smooth? Is it cold? Can they smell anything? Can they taste anything? If they're walking, what sound does their shoe make on the surface? How does their body feel? So really getting into your senses again, it shifts the focus from productivity to mindful. And as you say, what's going on in the background just carries on ticking, and it comes forward. So I think all these techniques because people don't tend to think about work-based writing as creative or needing creativity, but it's all creative. And the same thing when we're looking at a project, using brainstorming can be really, really useful as well. Just getting a load of post-it notes and actually just writing words down as they come to your head, and just sticking them up on a board, not trying to make any sense of any of it, just what comes into your mind, just stick it up on the board, and then actually have a look and start to put it together in groups. And that can give you ideas for paragraphs or for what should go into the report. And then there's other stuff you can look at and think, nah, no, I'm going to bin that. That's not gonna work. The other thing I quite like in terms of mindfulness with visualization is to think about something tangible, like you can build a little Lego wall, or you can write down the block things onto pieces of paper and actually screw them up and then push them off the desk and into the bin. Or, you know, so that the feelings about the block, the frustration might be one, or fear might be one, or panic might be another one, whatever it is, knot in my stomach. Get them onto a piece of paper, screw them up, push them into the bin, and put that voice aside. But same sort of thing, if you've got a block, little Lego wall, just construct your Lego wall and then just break it down and push it aside. And those physical things of I'm actually breaking blocks down can be really helpful. Psychologically, can be really, really helpful.
And is that visualizations of these Lego blocks, would that fall under NLP?
Yeah, it can
Or
be, yes, it can belong to NLP. And you know, NLP is really, really useful. So it's linguistic programming, and it's about the self-talk that we're doing in our brain. And it's really interesting, actually, that saying I don't do something is more, I think it's something like 8 times more productive. So, for example, if you're writing your report or whatever, if you say to yourself, I don't do overwhelm, or I don't do writer's block, I don't do procrastination, it actually gives you choice. It allows you to not engage in that process because you don't do it. And the more that you tell yourself, I don't do this, the brain believes you. And the brain believes what you tell it. So if you sit down and your thought processes are all about, oh, I hate writing reports and I'm not good at writing, and then the voices from the past come in, oh, I was in bottom group for English, or whatever it is, if you dwell on that stuff, that's what your brain produces for you. If you have a different linguistic set of self-talk going on, then you reduce the difficulties for yourself straight away.
yeah, I actually came across something very similar, and it was reframing. Instead of saying I can't do something today, and it's like I can't get this task done, I can't collect the kids after school, and you change it to I won't, and it's like
Yeah,
I can't make the time to get this done. It's like, no, I won't make the time because this is priority. I won't make the time
yeah,
because I don't have
yeah,
enough hours in the day. And instead of, you think that you're being negative to yourself, but you're actually empowering yourself because you're setting
yeah,
those boundaries.
yeah,
You're like, I won't do it
yeah,
because this is my priority. I
yeah,
won't do it because I I need to take time to relax, or I won't do it because so and so. And again, it's just reframing. It's the power of the words that we use. And I think a
yeah,
lot of
definitely.
people, yeah, they don't realize the power of the things that they tell themselves on a daily basis. If the first thing you say to yourself in the morning is I can't get up for work, and automatically it's going to be in your head the whole day, you're basically putting that programming into your head first thing in the morning. That's the first
Yeah,
like input you put into your head is like I can't go to work, and you're like, okay, you're probably telling your body to feel sick or have a headache just so that you don't want to go to work, or you can't make it into the office.
yeah, yeah. I think that's really, really important. And another word that I think it's really important to take out is should. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. If you can take should out and put could in, again, it's exactly the same as I won't. You're giving yourself the opportunity to say, well, I could do that, but in fact, I'm going to choose to do something else. And you then are choosing what you do, and you're owning that choice as well. And I I think having ownership of what you're doing is really important. And I think that can be very true in a corporate environment where there's a whole culture, work culture. And to actually give yourself choice within that work culture is, I think, is a really important thing to do. And yeah, as far as writing's concerned, I think it's very important to have that positive, the positive speak, but also the positive visualization. It can be really fun before you start to write to take yourself forward in time to that moment when the task's done, and see yourself celebrating that task finished, and then look back and say, wow, that was the easiest report I ever wrote, and that was because I did XYZ. And you can actually see yourself. So if you see yourself at the end of the process rather than at the start of the process, and you celebrate the end of the process, and you see those pages full of words and whatever, again, you're creating that image of success in your mind.
So when it comes to, let's say, your coaching, is that do you coach authors or do you coach people in their writing skills?
Yeah, no, I'm coaching writers rather than authors. Some of them will be authors, but I'm happy to coach anybody who is writing and needs help with their writing. And as I say, some of the people I coach are authors, some of them are writing for hobby, some of them are writing as part of their, struggling to write as part of their work remit. So I think those are all equally important things. And what's really interesting is that once you master some of these techniques that give you confidence in your writing, lots of people actually go on and extend their writing remit and start to look forward to writing, and they do all sorts of things with their writing. One of my clients went on to write down some stories for his grandchildren, and did that. Somebody else wrote down their memories of growing up just after the war, and turned out to have a real talent for being a raconteur and writing down memories and evoking that particular time. So I think it's one of those things that once you master it, it is really something that's joyful to do, in fact, and people often choose to extend it. Writing, people start to, because writing's so important. We can correspond with people, and it isn't just about content, it's a way of communicating with people, and writing can also be a legacy. So I think the lovely thing about writing is that it allows you to put your voice and your experience down. And sometimes people say, oh, well, I don't really know enough about anything to write a book, or to write a course, or whatever it is they're doing. But actually, you do, because even if you're only 2 steps ahead of the person behind you, you know exactly what they're feeling like, and you've found a pathway through, and that might be useful for them. You don't have to be a guru to be able to contribute. And I think that writing's a fantastic way of communicating with lots of different people. So I think it's a really fantastic tool to learn to love, definitely.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those skills that it kind of scares people, that they feel like have to be the expert writer from day one,
Yeah,
and that they feel like it's kind of, we get taught how to write a certain format in school, and how to put a header on a letter, and that's pretty much as far as it goes. And it's like just dear Mr. Smith and sincerely. Or I remember sometimes in school people be adding in the extra adverbs, and they'd be like desperately signed Mr. Smith,
Yeah.
and teachers being like, okay, you're getting creative, but you know that in a real world context, you can't really say that in a professional
Yeah.
environment. So that's when people feel limited. They're like, okay, I want to personalize this letter, but I don't know how to. And I
Yeah.
think that's where writing skills, it can intimidate people because they feel like, oh, I should have this because I was, why did we go to
Mm.
school for half our lives? And they feel like, okay, maybe my skills should be better. What am I being judged on? What standard should I
Mm.
have? So I think
Yeah.
that's definitely a great place to start. And I think then I suppose once you're confident in your writing skills within your job, and let's say be that technical or creative, or let's say content creation,
Mm.
that once you get comfortable in doing it for your job, you're like, okay, I can better um and interpret my own feelings or my own emotions
Yeah.
on paper or
Yeah.
in writing. And
Yeah.
as you said, people kind of reminiscing on their like memoirs from the war,
Yeah.
and being able
Yeah.
to put that on paper, their experiences that no one else can share but them. And you're giving them that ability where they can share it in a way that they want to share it and word it in a way that they
Yeah.
want to word it.
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone has their unique voice, and crafting that unique voice and getting your personality on paper is really, it's a fantastic thing, and it be incredibly cathartic as well. And going back to the burnout thing, actually being able to express yourself in a medium, you may choose to share it, but you don't have to. And journaling and writing can be hugely cathartic as well. And to feel that you can free write about your emotions and so on, um, can be really helpful in recovery from all sorts of stressful situations. And you can say things in writing that you can't necessarily say out loud, or you find it difficult to say out loud. You can practice conversations in writing, and creative writing can be wonderful for practicing a difficult conversation and practicing how it's going to go, and what you're going to say and all that sort of thing. It can be hugely helpful in that sense. And the great thing about writing on paper is that if you're writing out a load of stuff and you're venting, you can just rip the pages out and you can screw them up. You can burn them if you want to, and that can be
You
incredibly
can
cathartic
recycle
as
them. You can
well.
recycle them because we've got enough trees.
Yeah. So there's loads you can do with writing. It's really, I think it's really an important thing for people's well-being, as well as just being a productive thing. It's hugely beneficial for people's well-being.
Brilliant. And if anyone wants to get in touch with you and get started on improving on their writing skills, what's the best way to get in touch with you, Angela?
Well, great way to get in touch with me is to go onto my website where they can book a call, and then we can have a chat about what they're looking for and whether we're a good fit to work together. And they can get me at angelacairns.com. I'm also on social media, and you can link up with me on Facebook and Instagram at Angela Cairns Author. And I'm also on LinkedIn as Angela Cairns Author. So you can catch up with me on the social media channels as well.
Brilliant. Thank you, Angela. It was great having you on here on the show.
Good. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed it. It's been good to chat.